my God, Becky, look at her
watch.
It is so big. I can't believe it's just so round. It's like out there. I mean, gross. Look.
She's not wrong, just look at this thing. Maybe it doesn't look like much from the video, but I can tell you this is big and thick, and expensive and ridiculous, and I like it, and I cannot lie. A big thanks to Time Titans for loaning me the watch for a week. It might be for sale soon. Link below. This is the Panerai Submersible Anti-Magnetic, also known as the PAM1389, also known as the AMAG. This AMAG is a follow-up to the first anti-magnetic submersible, the 389, which was released in 2012. In 2017, Panerai replaced the 389 with the 1389. The watchmaker changed some design elements, like adding a blue seconds hand, and later added blue text to the dial. Panerai also updated the movement from the P9000 to the P9010. The 1389 is a divisive watch. Maybe these numbers will explain why. The case is made of titanium and has a diameter of 47 millimeters, and that doesn't include the 8 millimeter crown guard. It has a thickness of 16 millimeters and a length of 56 millimeters. It's water resistant to 300 meters, and it's magnetically resistant to 500 Gauss, which is about 9 times the ISO standard for anti-magnetic watches. The price is $11,800. I find that upsetting, and I can come up with dozens of reasons that it shouldn't cost that much, but that's a fool's errand in luxury watches. Panerai has priced itself just above Rolex and seems content to stay there. Rather than going head-to-head with the crown, Panerai is trying to convince consumers that it's above Rolex. After all, if something is more expensive, it must be better, right? I do wonder if that strategy would work in a world where you could buy a Submariner as easily as you could buy a submersible. But to me, it's not the price that's the real shocker, it's the size. By comparison, here's a 44mm Panerai Luminor, and here's a 40mm Explorer 2, and here's a 36mm Explorer 1. And here's another big titanium diver, the Omega Ploprof. It's about 55mm across, but only 49mm long. That's the most important dimension of the submersible. It's 56mm from lug to lug. I think because it has a bezel, the dial size doesn't look all that crazy, but it definitely hangs over the edges of my 7-inch wrist. After a few days of wearing this watch, I started losing all perspective. I can no longer tell if this looks silly on me or kinda cool. I think I'm under its big, thick spell, and there might be no turning back. Pray for me. I know there are people with much smaller wrists than me who wear 47mm submersibles and Luminors, but should they? I mean, from a fashion perspective, people should wear whatever the hell makes them feel good as long as it doesn't hurt other people. Life's too short to worry about if a watch looks good on your wrist or not, and yet, I do worry about it. As for comfort, this thing is awesome. The titanium case is the primary reason the AMAG is comfortable on my 7-inch wrist. In some ways, the width helps provide a necessary base for what is actually a really thick watch. The 2 straps that come with the watch also help with that comfort. There's this vented rubber dive strap, and then my favorite, the leather and sailcloth strap. This one uses a Velcro-like material, which means you can size it in nearly infinite ways. And the blue contrast stitching is nice. Like on all submersibles, there's a sort of a quick change strap system. Okay, it's not that quick, but it is a system for changing straps. Pressing the button on the underside of the lug unlocks the bar. There's no spring, so you have to push it through. But it is easier than taking a screwdriver to the outside of your lugs. All the submersibles also use a case shape that Panerai calls their 1950 case. From the side, it's kind of like an upturned bowl. I've always liked this shape. When used on thick watches, it has a slimming effect. Compare the 1950 case shape to the standard Luminar case shape. The standard case uses these big slab sides. The 1950 sides slope and sweep, and the corners come to elegant points. The 60-click bezel has a matte ceramic insert that is dotted with circular steel markers. They remind me of the rivets you might see on the portholes of a ship. I'm sure that's no accident. I'm not really into these, but they don't offend me. I just think that if you're going to use a scratch-resistant bezel material like ceramic, maybe don't put a scratchable metal on there too. I do, however, like the use of blue on the dial. Panerai might try to market this as a tool dive watch, but let's be honest, this is a fun watch. It's big, it's kinda loud, and I think the color accents match that vibe. And I'm super glad the brand didn't use tan lume on this watch like it has with so many of its watches. This is a modern dive watch, and it should look that way. It's modern in its design, it's modern in its materials like titanium and ceramic, and it's modern in its movement. The AMAG uses the Panerai Caliber 9010. The 9010 is an automatic in-house movement that beats 8 times per second, or 4 Hz. It has 2 barrel springs, giving it a 3-day power reserve. This turned out to be pretty useful when I put the watch down for a couple days. And like many in-house Panerai movements, the P9010 uses a jumping hour hand. The P9010 has a date complication, which often bothers me on Panerai's Luminor watches. But on the Submersible, I'm good with it. Again, it's a modern aesthetic. And yeah, I admit, a date is pretty handy. You can now revoke my Watch Nerd membership. In fact, maybe my membership was already revoked because I like this watch. I know I'm not the only one. In the last few days that I've been posting photos of this watch on Instagram, I've received a lot of positive comments and messages. But there's at least an equal amount of hate for big watches like this, and I get it. I see a lot of big watches on guys who feel like they have something to prove, or more likely something to compensate for. It's kind of an ugly scene. But then there are people like me who also enjoy 35mm Cartiers, for example, and get a lot of fun out of wearing something this thick and juicy, as the Honorable Sir Mix-a-Lot would say. Maybe a watch like this is in poor taste. I can't tell anymore. But it shouldn't matter. It's quality. It's interesting. It looks badass. And yeah, it's big. I like big watches, and I cannot lie.